In this tutorial, I'll show you how to use animated props and animated effects. Here I will show you how to use an animated prop. We'll use the ditch cover as an example. We'll drag it over and drop it on our stage here. Make it a little bit bigger so we can see it easily. And we'll show it on the timeline here. And under the motion track, we want to expand that and show the sprite. Alright. With that object selected, or the prop selected, I went to the sprite editor, and in the sprite editor you can see that there are 4 different sprites available for this prop. The first one, which is a default, is an image, it's a still image, not animated, of the cover closed. The second one here is a still image of the cover open. The third one is an animation of the cover closing, and the last one is an animation of the cover opening. We'll start with the cover closed. And let's move out to, say, frame 20, and we want it to open. So then we go over and switch sprites over to the cover open animation. And if you notice down here on our timeline, you'll see another little diamond there, which means we had a sprite switch, and we are now on a different sprite. So if we rewind and play this, we can see that it opens starting at 20 and ends somewhere around 50. But you'll also notice that if we just leave it there, the animation is going to keep repeating over and over in a loop. So we don't want to do that. So what we need to do is to find out where that animation stops. So we'll just move forward on our timeline until we find a spot where it stops, which is right around 50. And at that point we can then switch the sprite to the still image of the cover open. Now what that does here, if we rewind and play it, is it will open, then it switches to the still sprite of it open and stays that way forever. So now let's go the opposite way. We go out here, here's where it's open. Let's move out to, say, frame 80, and we'll want this to close. So now we will go through the close animation, and if we take our timeline and scrub down here, and right about there is where it's closed, we can then switch back to the close image so that that close animation doesn't repeat over and over again. We can rewind, play, and we see it opens, stays open, then closes, and then it stays closed. And that's the basics for using an animated prop. An animated prop or effect will typically have one of 2 different sprite switch sequences that are used. The previous example you just saw used this first sequence, which starts off with a closed image, which is non-animated. Then you can switch to an open animation, which actually shows the object opening, and then you finish up with an image of it open as a still, so that it doesn't change anymore. If at some point in the future you want to close it again, then there's typically a close animation, and then after the close animation you would go back to the closed still image. A second common sequence is one where there are basically 3 animated sprites. One would be a beginning animation, the second one would be the loop that you can extend for as long or as short as you wish, and then an ending animation. This next example I will show you has the begin, loop, in type of sequencing. Here I'll show you how to use another animated prop. I have Dr. Naughty's ray gun here, and I want a ray to come out of it. And we have a ray prop here, a beam of energy coming out, or whatever. We place it in the stage, and we'll see this crosshair here, which is typically used as a placeholder and for placement of the animation. So what I'll do is move that over to the little circle at the end of the ray gun, which is where I assume that the ray comes out of. This particular one actually has an indicator of where the ray goes, and you can see and you can place that to get the best effect that you want there. Typically a lot of these will only have the crosshairs. They won't have images at that point. So now what we want to do is open up the sprite editor here, and we can see they call it the dummy one here. What we're going to do initially is make that invisible because there's nothing happening. And we're going to move out to frame 20, and we want to press the trigger and have the ray start to come out. So we'll use the start effect, and let's scrub out here and watch that. And you can see as I move along, it keeps repeating. Now that's perfectly acceptable in some cases, but for what I want to do here, we'll go out to frame 30, say, and we'll start the looping effect at that point. Now when it loops, it just keeps continually putting out the energy rather than stopping and starting again. And we can go out to, say, frame 80, switch to the end sprite, and watch it stop. And when it's all done, say around 100, and switch back to an empty sprite, and we're done. If we rewind and play, we can see it start, it goes through the looping, and then it ends. An animated prop or effect will have a set of sprites that will be set up for the particular usage of that animation. One would be a open and close, like we saw in the dish cover, where it had the open still, the close still, then the open animation, the close animation. There's always the empty sprite, and then sometimes there's also a position image, which is a crosshair showing where you can place it, as we saw in our second example, where that one had the position image, it had the begin animation, the loop, and the end animation, as well as the empty sprite. In the next example, I will show an animated prop that does not have a position image, it just has a single animation, and then I will show a effect that is animated that has a position image and a single animation. Here I will show how to use an animated prop and an animated special effect. I'm going to start with this little ball of energy or whatever it is. Let's see what this does. Okay, it just does some pulsing. Alright, what I want to try and create here is an explosion, so I want to start this off pretty small. And let's move out to, say, frame 30 and have this come up a little bit bigger, like so. Scrub back and forth, that looks good. The other thing I want to do is start out with 0 opacity, and at frame 30 we'll have full 100% opacity so that it will appear like that, which is good. Alright, and then around 35, what I want to do is have an explosion. Now I have a special effect that I can use for that, and it's called frustration, I believe. Furious, there we go. So we'll add that in. Now if you notice when we add that in, it's just a crosshair there, and that's just for placement purposes. If we play that, nothing happens because it's just a single image of how to place it. Okay, so what we want to do is, let's see where that is. We'll take and move this down near the bottom, like so. And then out at 35, we want to change the sprite over to its animation, which is the single sprite. And when we scrub that out, it goes out, and then it goes invisible. We'll want to switch back to empty, and then prior to 35 we also want it to be empty, so we get rid of the position sprite. And right about there we want to also have the ball of energy effect there, sprite. We want to change that over to empty at that point. And let's see what we got. So if I go back to the beginning, there's nothing. Energy ball comes up, explosion goes, and everybody disappears. Now, taking the examples I've shown, I put them together into a short clip which follows.
I didn't order that. Try again and get it right this time.
I hope this tutorial has been helpful. Please check out my other tutorials on the YouTube channel CTA Step by Step. If you have any questions or problems, please contact me. I'll be glad to help.